Robbie Jeanette here on The Curious Musician with Eric Skodis. Eric, thank you so much for being here. Uh,
Thanks for having me.
Eric is known primarily as a drummer, but you also have things to do in the special effects realm, yes?
Yeah, for
So,
like 15 years.
yes, so I'm interested in all of it. What would you say people know you most for?
In music, you mean, or
Just in
just
general,
out of
like
those two things?
out of those two things, what is generally the thing that people recognize you most for your
I mean,
work?
I would think it would be music and most notably Imperial Drag, probably. So,
And Imperial Drag, for those who don't know, came out of Jellyfish
right.
in some ways. It was its own band with its own music. You had Roger Manning and Eric Dover and Joe Carnes, and you guys only did one studio album, yeah?
Yeah.
But that album still has a lot of fans, still resonates around the world, and you know, coming out of that Jellyfish world, which also has its own fetishization, it's all part of this kind of great power pop world. In
Mhm.
the 90s, people who weren't there, and we were obviously there, that music didn't fit. Like,
No.
it wasn't, there was a period, so you can agree or disagree with me on this. After grunge started to peter out, the alternative 90s became, let's see what happens. You got School of Fish over here, you got,
Mhm.
all these bands that kind of didn't fit anywhere, but there was something about Jellyfish and Imperial Drag that were more of a throwback than a let's see what's going forward, even though it was in some ways forward thinking music. Jellyfish, especially with Albie Galutin and the whole, like that was very much steeped in that sound of the past, but Imperial Drag was a little bit more of a push to the future, right?
Yes and no. I mean, we always had one foot in the future and one in the past. Like, we definitely had a retro, sorry to use the R word,
No, yeah,
kind of vibe, but we were also trying to make it a little bit more modern. And even when we were going to do the demos for the second record, that really would have been way more modern because we're listening to like a lot of electronic artists and stuff.
right.
And um, so that's what would have happened. But like, you know, fashion wise, the way we looked and everything, we weren't wearing bell bottoms and capes like Jellyfish were. We were
Right.
trying to look we looked a little bit more modern. We're kind of contemporary of that mid to late '90s alternative
Right.
uh, vibe or whatever. And so yeah, and our music, decidedly was, of course, very had a lot of '70s isms in it and stuff like that.
Right.
But you know, we were more on the rock end of things, whereas Jellyfish was way more on the power pop side of things. So
Right. So who would you guys play with that you felt was a good match when you were out touring as Imperial Drag?
you know, there weren't a lot. I mean, there were a lot of bands we loved playing with, but
Yeah.
that personally, but as far as like a match, I mean, the only band really that was doing anything like what we were doing is we played one like showcase in Paris for our Columbia people. That was us, Kula Shaker, and the London Suede, who
Wow.
used to just be the Suede. But
Yeah.
Kula Shaker, by led by Crispin Mills, they were the only band that really was kind of doing something on the same kind of level we were doing, where it was kind of '70s but kind of modern at the same time.
Yeah.
So that
Interesting.
we were paired with anything, and I say paired, it was for one gig, it was a
Right.
showcase. So that was the closest, because all the other bands either sounded really, indie '90s alternative, like really like of that time.
Right.
Like the Nixons and the Verve Pipe were very of that time.
Sure.
And then another band we played with, which was and Alanis Morissette, of course. Another band we played with was the James Hall Pleasure Club, who we loved, and they were so far out of, I don't even know if it's left field. They were so far out of our galaxy, and we were big fans of them because like they were just so musically not of that time. And like, I don't know if you've ever checked out James Hall's music, but he's a brilliant musician and songwriter.
What
And
happened to him? Where did he go?
he's still making music. He lived in New Orleans, where he's from, and I don't know if he lives in Nashville or what. I'd have to find out. But he moved after Katrina
Yeah.
because I think his house got trashed.
Yeah.
But they were a really cool band. They were like, I always said, they were like if you put like Mick Jagger sort of put in the Brundlefly teleportation machine with Miles Davis,
Yeah.
and then he got put into Pere Ubu, as a band. Like they were so,
Yeah,
I mean, they were so out there, but amazing music, like really moody and dark and really cool.
it's
And they were,
interesting how
yeah,
you could be so unique that you just stand out. Sometimes that gets you the longevity because you outlast styles because you're
yeah,
yourself, and
oh yeah.
sometimes you're too out and nobody can fit you then or now. You know,
Well, and
it's
that's the other thing too is that right after Imperial Drag broke up, about 5 or 6 years after, I saw Roger at a party at his house, and he and I were kind of laughing, woefully, saying, "Man, if we could have stuck it out, like, because look at all the bands right now." And at that time, in like the early 2000s, there was like Wolf Mother, the Dotsons,
yep,
Kings of Leon, all
yep,
these bands were doing this kind of 70s kind of,
yeah,
fuzzy, long mutton
jet,
chops kind of thing. And we're like, oh, if we could have just held it together another 5 or 6 years, we would have been huge. But
yeah, agreed.
you
And
know,
sometimes, it takes, like in the old days, they give you three, four, five records to get your legs. And then it comes to a point as an artist in the 90s where it's like, you got one record. If it doesn't make it, see ya, you know?
yeah. And in the immortal words of Artie Fufkin, I got no timing. I got no timing. I got no timing. And I mean, you could say that about Jellyfish. They were
Yep.
too early. If they'd maybe come out 4 years or 5 years later, they might have benefited from what you were just talking
Yeah.
about the indie grunge thing kind of subsiding, and then there was that weird kind of gray area of the late '90s
Yeah.
where there was a lot more varied kind of bands. So
And you
who
had
knows?
the rap rock thing coming up, the Limp Bizkit thing coming up, but there was that
Yeah,
alternative. And again, I bring up band like School of Fish, like, or Dada,
right.
or
They didn't really fit
Huffamoose.
in. Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
No, it's definitely true.
yeah, and some of those bands like Huffamoose, a band that if unless you know them, you've probably never heard of them. Amazing, incredible, but where do they fit?
Right.
I couldn't even believe they were on, I think, Interscope, like with all
Yeah,
these other like bands that were super, and there's this
yeah,
oddball, really weird band that is
yeah.
amazing.
And then
uh,
and then there's this sort of Trojan horse bands like Radiohead, who
yeah,
came in as this sort of pedestrian, um, you know, uh, Britpop band,
yep.
and then just went, just like tore open a hole in the galaxy, and like, wait, what are these guys doing now? And made some incredible music.
Well, the thing they did was they evolved, and most
Yeah,
bands they get into a trap where you're trying to please the label, the fans, radio, management. What you sounded like that got you famous, most people want that same flavor, even though
right.
not everybody can nickelback themselves into reinventing the same vanilla ice cream cone.
Did you just
And
say Nickelback?
well, they famously, I
Oh,
think
right.
there's a YouTube video where two of their songs, one on the left, one on the right, and they just track each other perfectly.
Oh, that's right.
Like, so
That's nice.
not everybody is comfortable reinventing themselves in the exact same
Right,
outfit, and not
right,
everybody can be a Bowie.
right.
But in
Or
the middle
Prince.
there,
Prince did the same thing. Prince started off as a very pedestrian R&B artist, and then he did Dirty Mind and Controversy, and everybody was like,
yeah,
"What the hell is this?" Like, if you look at Dirty Mind,
yeah,
or if you look at For You, and then look at Dirty Mind, it's like it's two totally different artists,
yeah. And
and yet people went along with him.
he became the Prince that we know, and then became more of what he was. But it's not like he took too many left turns, different personas, or anything like that. He didn't do a Ziggy Stardust of himself, but he did do the symbol. Things changed,
Right,
and he recorded so much music.
so much.
I feel like certain artists, and this is just for me personally, like a Prince, I gravitate to the same dozen songs. And every time I dig, sometimes I find something, but most of the time, I like what I like.
Yeah, same
Are
here.
there artists like that for you where you
Oh
love
hell
an
yeah,
artist, but for just a group of songs?
so much. I mean, Rush, Van Halen, uh,
Cheap
God,
Trick?
Cheap Trick. I mean, Cheap Trick has the longest of all the bands that I've loved. They've got the longest span of music that I loved.
Yeah,
Like, from the first record. I mean, there's even a lot of stuff they did in the '90s that I liked.
yeah,
And I mean, there's not too many bands I can say, like, Kiss petered out for me after, I think, maybe Love Gun, or what was after Love Gun? Dynasty.
yeah. Well,
Well, whenever they cut their hair, I was like, nope.
yeah, Animalize and all that stuff.
I'm done.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Although there's a great song on Unmasked called "Is That You?" That's a killer song.
And I could put on Charisma off Dynasty and be all right. You know? Get my
There's some good songs. It's what's funny is in the time we're living in now. I always say this to all my musician friends. Is I was just saying this to a friend of mine the other day. How it's so hilarious now that songs that back in the 80s and 90s we would hear on the radio and go, "Oh God!" Like "Dive for the Dial," turn that
yeah.
off. Those horrible songs, like pop songs that were just garbage. Now, because sorry to sound like an old man, but like now because in my estimation, modern music is so like. I'll be at like Target or Home Depot or something.
Right.
Two shops we should be boycotting, by the way. But I'll be in some big box store and they'll be playing music over the loudspeaker, and it'll be some song from the 80s and 90s that before that, years ago, I would have been like, "Oh God, this is horrible,"
Right.
and now I'm like, "This isn't that bad."
Yeah, the
like,
production.
That's how far we've fallen.
It happens. I mean, look, there's things you probably loved when you were coming up, when you were a teenager, getting into music and rock and roll that now you don't listen to as much anymore because they fulfilled that need for you then. But now when you listen to
Or
it,
your
maybe,
taste changed.
yeah, or maybe it sounds corny now, like early Kiss or whatever it was.
Right.
When you were growing up, everybody has an origin story. For you, what was the first music that really caught you, where you recognized it, whether it was that you heard it or saw it on TV?
Well, the real first thing, which I swear to God, I credit as my wanting to play drums, was the Banana Splits.
Yes.
I was a little kid. I saw these little four, animals playing these guitars and the camera zooming in and out and this drum set thing. I didn't even know what drums or guitars were. I was just like, I want that.
Yeah.
And started banging on pots and pans like a cliche out of a movie. And my parents were like, "Oh, maybe we should buy him a drum set." And then they bought me a drum set, and the rest is history. The first band, though, that really made an impression on me was the Osmonds on the Crazy Horses record.
Oh,
and the great thing is not only have I turned more people onto that record, but so many musicians, especially like right when I got into the group of like all the Imperial Drag guys, Jellyfish guys, and then meeting all the guys from the Brian Wilson camp, all, because we're all friends and stuff.
Yeah.
All of those people to a person knows that record. If you go Osmond's Crazy Horses, they're like, "Oh yeah." Like everybody knows that record's great.
Yeah.
And it's like this little shorthand we have with each other. And that record made a huge impression on me because I don't know are you familiar with that record?
Big time. I was just actually had a discussion with a person just saying that record sounds like what somebody who doesn't do drugs or drink thinks rock and roll is supposed to sound like. You know what I mean?
And that's exactly what it is. There are these teenage Mormon kids who were like, "We want to rock."
Yeah.
They weren't gonna like go around and shoot up heroin or anything like that, but they wanted to rock, and they loved the Stones, and they loved the Beatles, and they loved Led Zeppelin, and you can hear it on that record. And it's just an incredible record. I think it's so great. I'm wishing that before he passes away, I wish I could meet Donny Osmond and just get on my knees and like hold his hand and just tell him what an impression that that album made on little 7-year-old Eric.
And if you were aware of the Osmonds as a kid like that, and I was aware of them, I didn't have albums, but in my adulthood, I got the Plan.
Oh yeah,
listening to that let me in. I'm like, I mean, these guys were really, really talented, and some people, might say, "Oh, they're just teeny boppers or whatever," but just huge talent. And then you watch them like doing yo-yo on the Flip Wilson show, and they got these choreographed dance moves, and
they're playing,
and the outfits,
and they're singing, and the outfits are amazing,
like 30 pounds of rhinestones.
But they're all singing their harmonies, and they sound amazing. That's one of the
Donnie on synth.
Yes,
like
in Crazy Horses. So amazing. Yeah.
So, and they obviously had their time and whatnot, but now if you walked up to anybody under 40 and said, "Do you know even who the Osmonds are?" Right? But if you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of songwriting, if you're a fan of harmony, getting exposed to that, which you're not going to get unless you meet somebody who knows about it and says, "Hey, let me turn you on to this." You're not going to hear it in school. It's not going to be on unless it's in a movie, or something. Right. It's like all that is accessible, and yet unless people hear it, it's it's like a book sitting there unread. So when you were listening to music and getting into the Osmonds and stuff, and you saw the Banana Splits and the drumming, what was the first drumming on record? Was it the Crazy Horses record, or what was the first record where you were like, "Oh, the drumming," the drummer?
There's two songs I really remember that made such a massive impression on me. One was the song by Edgar Winter Group called Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And I still have the 45 that I bought when I was a kid.
Nice.
And that was the truncated like radio version. It would be like 10, 15 years till I would hear the long version of the solo.
Wow.
I was like, wait, there's more? That, and it's such a silly thing, but the drum fill going into the chorus of Cherokee Nation by Paul Revere and the Raiders,
Wow.
which I later found out many years later is actually Hal Blaine. Have you ever seen Hal Blaine with that giant fiberglass drum kit that he has?
Yeah.
That that's him. And you know, me being a little kid and like, you know, it's so funny. I'm sure you went through this too with like, because keyboards is your main instrument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever your main instrument is, when you're a kid, as soon as you get into that instrument, then your parents are like, oh, look, that guy's playing drums. Or, you know, here's Karen Carpenter on Johnny Carson, you know, and you're like, oh, what? You know, you want to be, you're just like a magnet for it, like a sponge. And so when I heard that fill, that it was just like, what's that? Drums, you know? So, yeah, those are the two earliest ones that really made me. And I mean, the drum solo, even the shortened one on Frankenstein by Edgar Winter, it's magical.
Who's the drummer on that? Do we know?
I'd have to look it up. It's this guy. He has this really normal name. I think he's passed away now. I'd have to look it up. But he's not. He never became a noteworthy drummer. But he is really great. If there's a great video on YouTube, I can send you the link.
Yeah.
Where it's them. I think maybe on the Midnight Special playing it live.
Nice.
And they do this long, like even longer than the record version drum solo. And Edgar Winter's playing the timbales with the drummer.
Nice.
And it's unbelievable. It's so great. Yeah.
That's cool. So, and these were your formative years, right?
Yeah.
And at some point you got a kit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was that early kit and how did that evolve?
Well, my parents literally just like woke me up one day and said, Eric, come here. And I walked into my dad's office and there was this little beat up used, it was like half black, half white, little Ludwig drum set. My parents went down to Drum City in Hollywood and you know, said, hey, what kind of drum kit can $50 get us? Because they didn't want to buy me a big drum set and have me like peter out, you know, 6 months into having it or something. So they just pieced together like, you know, some scraps and like a cymbal and a snare and a hi-hat.
Yep.
And I mean, if I looked at it now, it'd be like, this is a piece of garbage. But, you know, I was like, oh my God, drums. And to my mom's credit, she said, okay, now you're not just going to like be banging on these things and driving us crazy. If you want to play drums, you're going to have to take lessons. And I went, okay. I didn't know what that entailed. Right. I was a horrible student. I never practiced my lessons. It's actually like, you know, when you see kids and they eat nothing but like pizza crust and like, you know, Cheerios, and you go, my kids are going to die of malnutrition. I don't know how I learned anything about drums from how bad of a student I was. Because I think my poor teacher must have been like, so did you practice your lesson this week? I'm like, no. So how I learned anything is just like by osmosis or something. I just amassed it by.
You listen to enough great music and you pick things up and then you try things out, right? You want to play along with stuff and then you're off and running.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, to his credit, I think my drum teacher did teach me at least enough to learn the basic rudiments. Like my first day in my study room on top of Drum City in Hollywood. Don't bother looking for it; it's not there anymore. Is we walked in the room and there was 2 practice pads and a drum kit, and I went running over to the drum kit and my teacher was like, sit down over here, and I was like, what? And he goes, you're going to learn all those 26 rudiments before you touch that drum kit. And I was like, oh, okay. So paradiddle,
yep,
for a year. But then I got to the drum kit, and you know, so I mean, I must have learned something.
Yeah. Was there music outside of rock and roll that you were exposed to and drumming there?
Yeah, a lot. My dad, who was like a total square, very conservative, he listened to jazz, hated rock and roll, didn't like it, didn't get it. It wasn't even in his purview. He loved jazz, especially big band jazz, and he loved classical. So I got that from him. And then my mom, who was younger, liked rock, pop, and show tunes. And so I got that from her. So I really got a nice, well-rounded, like a lot of kids that I knew as I got older were like, I only like rock. I only like metal. I only like punk. And I was like, I like everything, you know?
Yeah.
and thanks to my parents, my dad was musical. Like, he played piano, and if he had given more time into it, I think he actually could have been pretty good. He had a really beautiful baby grand Steinway in our house, and he would try like Rachmaninoff and Gershwin and all sorts of Chopin stuff.
Right.
And he always got to like a certain point, but he would just kind of like, he had a snag, and he would just kind of fluff through it, but he just never put the effort into it. So that was like the only other person in my family at that time that I knew of that was musical.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, I mean, I can listen to classical music and get just as much of a charge out of that as I can listening to a Van Halen song.
Awesome.
Like, equally, yeah.
Did they take you to live music at all as a kid?
Oh yeah, my mom was really great because she used to take my brother and I. Where we lived in Studio City was right across the freeway, up in the hills, up south of the boulevard, up in, just south of Mulholland, and our backyard overlooked Universal Studios.
Oh,
well,
wow.
they had just built the brand new Universal City Amphitheater, and the first year they were open, that first summer, Jesus Christ Superstar was on stage there. My mom took my brother and I. It was amazing. Blew my head. I was 7 years old. I'm like, that's how I learned about the life of Jesus Christ. Was from
Right.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, wacky, with skeletons crucified and mook synthesizers and stuff and fuzzy guitar. But we saw Paul Williams there,
Wow.
Three Dog Night, and Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Wow. That's very cool.
And then my mom and dad and brother and I, we went to go to the Greek Theater, and I actually saw the Hot August Night concert that Neil Diamond did on that record. I was at that concert.
That's cool.
I was a little kid. I still remember. It was amazing. It was really great.
The energy that guy put forth, right?
Do you know that record at all?
I do. I never understood the cover photo.
Oh, I know. Like, what's he holding? A phantom schwung? Like, this is...
I don't know. It was just I could never figure that out.
It's a really weird choice. I don't know. Like,
but
it was
musically,
like, that's the one.
Yeah, no, musically it's great.
Yeah, the way it starts with the orchestra in the beginning, and you hear the people in the audience like giggling and filing in and stuff.
Right.
And I remember that's how it was. You just heard this music, and all of a sudden it got louder and louder, and everybody in the audience was kind of like going, "Wait, is this part of the show?" And then it goes into this big dramatic swell, and then you hear this organ play this chord and hold it. And they used to have, I don't know if they still do at the Greek Theater, but they used to have these like fire doors that would open up.
Okay.
Like almost like a curtain. And so this door opened up, and then you saw this like big scaffolding with the orchestra. And then I'm getting chills just talking about it.
That's
and then Neil Diamond walks out and starts playing Crunchy Granola Suite on guitar, and they ripped into it. And he had this huge band and this orchestra, and it was a show, man. It was a big show. And even though I was a little kid, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. So
I love that.
Yeah.
So when you're growing up as a kid, you obviously probably saw a lot of music on television and music in movies.
Oh yeah.
Or heard music and television and movies. And then you got into, obviously, on the movie realm, doing special effects.
Right.
Talk to me about your things musically or special effects wise that you saw that piqued your interest, either watching television at home and something came on, you're like, holy crap, or when you went to see a movie.
Well, I mean, musically, it was such an amazing time, for one thing, to be a kid in the late 60s, early 70s, because everybody that was the sort of arbiters of the tastemakers, all the show producers and writers and directors and stuff, they obviously by the mid to late 60s realized that like all the young people, because the 1960s really, I guess it was late 50s and early 60s, was the first time like Madison Avenue were like, oh, there's all these young people that are like, that have income, and we need to cater to them. And especially when rock and roll had been around from like the late 50s into the 60s, especially by the late 60s, where they were like, we want to like tap into this younger group of this younger audience. And so all the shows when I was a kid, the Banana Splits, Josie and the Pussycats, Scooby-Doo, the Monkees, Partridge Family.
I love the Partridge Family.
Even though on Gilligan's Island, there was a rock band, the Mosquitoes. Like everything was like rock and roll, rock and roll, rock. So as a kid, it was just plugged in. So, and then there was so many, Tonight Show, Midnight Special, Don Kirshner, all those things, all the variety shows. There was just constantly music, even though it was like cheesy and very white. It was still a lot of music.
Yeah.
Donnie and
And
Marie.
live and touched by AI and untouched by
Yeah,
auto tuning. Like, yeah,
yeah,
Donnie and Marie,
yeah. Donnie and
Cher.
Marie. And before that, Sonny and Cher. And like
Yeah.
everybody in the '70s had a variety show.
Yep.
Um, and so there was that. And then as far as like movies and stuff, it's actually, I always say it's weird that I didn't get into makeup effects. And earlier, in fact, I think if I wasn't a musician, I would have gotten into that,
Yeah.
right out of high school, because simultaneously, while I was loving music, I really loved movies. In fact, my girlfriend thinks that I love movies more than I love music, and I think she might be right. And I really do.
Yeah.
But movies were like, late '60s, early '70s, 2001, Planet of the Apes,
Yep.
all these great Irwin Allen TV shows like Lost in Space and
Yep.
Time Tunnel and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and Land of the Giants, like all those shows, like I was just all about that.
Yeah.
Ironically, for some reason, I never got into Star Trek.
Huh.
It just didn't. I don't know if it was too cerebral for me, and this is gonna sound so dumb, but like also I remember on Star Trek the sets to me always looked like cardboard, and I was always just kind of like, that's fake.
Yeah.
Um, I appreciated Star Trek much later in life, but
Yeah.
and then of course Star Wars was just.
Yes.
And then to go back to the music thing, and there's the thing our mutual friend Damon Fox and I talk about all the time, because he and I are huge Star Wars fans. He even bigger than me, and we're both fans of Jaws. Well, those two movies, first Jaws and then Star Wars, John Williams.
Yes.
I mean, that was where like my brain just cracked open and went, what is this? Like, I don't think I ever really paid attention to film music before John Williams' Jaws score, and then later Star Wars. And those were, this is back in the day, young kids out there, where we didn't have a DVD player on the back of our parents' headrest and while we're sitting in our baby seat,
right?
Or you couldn't just like go on your phone and watch a movie,
right?
If you wanted to see a movie, you saw it in the theater, and then you either went back to the theater to see it again, or you had to wait till it came out, years later, and they'd play it on TV and you get chopped up by commercials. So the next best thing to kind of relive that movie was get the soundtrack. Yes. I still have hanging on my wall my Jaws soundtrack from John Williams, and I would put that on my parents' turntable in my living room and just lie on the floor and just, it sounds so cliche, but I just get lost in all the music. And I literally, to this day, I can hear any selection off of either the Jaws or the Star Wars soundtrack, and I can go, okay, this is where Quint gets off the boat and then he turns and says something to Hooper. Like, I know, seriously, note by note, minute by minute, just because I just absorbed those records. And that's when I fell in love with film music. I'm like, after that, I got, especially later in life, into like Jerry Goldsmith and Bernard Herrmann and all the greats out there and stuff. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And so for on your musical journey, when you started to get to where you got your next level kit and you were starting to want to actually play with people, what was your first musical project?
My technical first one was a neighbor down the street, my friend Kevin Mack, who I'm still friends with.
Nice.
He was a couple years older than me, and he was like the cool kid in the neighborhood that like made like Super 8 movies with his G.I. Joes and made his own comic books and stuff.
Yeah.
And I always really looked up to him. He eventually, years later, went on to become like an award-winning visual effects artist, really talented guy. And when he went to, I think it's about 5 or 6 years older than me, he went to Art Center in Pasadena, and he called me up one day, and I think I was probably 12 or 13. He said, "Hey, Eric, you still playing drums?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "My friends and I are doing this talent show. We want to do a band and have you playing it." So that's technically my first gig.
Cool.
My first band, when I first started playing right out of high school in 83 or 4, was this band called Tear Garden, spelled Tear. And we were very of the, new romantic, death rocky, like Cult, Cure, Susie, Duran Duran, Band of LA, that kind of thing. Listening to like Bauhaus and stuff like that.
And where would you play in LA at that point?
The only place really for us to play, especially because because we were underage, was Madame Wong's West.
Oh wow!
Okay. That was where we played our first gigs, first downstairs. Did you ever play Madame Wong's?
I never did.
We played. It was like this big building. I guess it was a restaurant for years. And I've heard so many people say this, I still don't know if it's true, that at one time it was also, before that, it was a mortuary. They used to have these massive walk-in freezers, which could have been for food, could have been for cadavers. I don't
You never
know.
know.
But they had a downstairs area where you kind of played first, and then you graduated to the upstairs area. But it was a really fun place to play, really big club. And that sort of predated the whole Hollywood scream downtown LA scene that
Yep.
happened in the mid to late 80s. So
And the
yeah, that's
Sunset Strip metal scene was going on obviously around the same time.
yeah, they were kind of concurrent because, you know, the Sunset Strip metal scene was sort of like a phase two of the late 70s Sunset Strip scene that was like Van Halen, a la carte, early Quiet Riot with Randy Rhoads and Rudy Sarzo,
Odin,
Odin,
London.
exactly, all those, exactly, London that begat Motley Crue, etc.
Yep.
That was like the late '70s, and the Starwood was part of that. I missed the Starwood by 1 year. When I first started going out to clubs, it was closed, and I'm still bummed that I missed that, because I really would have loved to have gone there. But by the time I started hitting the clubs in earnest, and me and my friends had like fake IDs at that, and we were sneaking into the Troubadour and the Rainbow and the Roxy and the Whiskey.
So
but I missed that.
What bands were you seeing when you go to those clubs? Would you see any bands before they kind of blew up?
Yes, we saw Rat, who were really great back then. They were like there were all the bands back then were so cookie cutter. There was like Rough Cut, Rat. We didn't see Quiet Riot because they had, Randy had gone off to do Ozzy,
right,
and then behind the scenes, Kevin was getting Carlos Cavazo from a local LA band called Snow that was part of that earlier scene I was telling you about, putting that together. So all the bands were like these kind of cookie cutter bands that had the same hair, leg warmers, spandex, two kick drums, flat cymbals, doing the whole Tommy Lee thing. Everybody was just doing that same thing. But yeah, the one band that really stood out of all of them was Rat, because they had great songs. They had Warren DeMartini on guitar. And briefly, they had a young guy after Warren left for a while, and then he came back. But while he was gone, we saw Rat, and they had this young guy, thick curly brown hair, named Mark Torian.
Oh yeah,
who was like this little Eddie Van Halen clone.
Bullet Boys.
Yeah, well, later, we saw them with him on guitar, and he was basically just an Eddie Van Halen clone.
Wow,
and then years later,
knew he played like that.
Oh, he's amazing. But like 5 or 6 years later, I see Bullet Boys, and they're like, oh, he went from being an Eddie Van Halen clone to a David Lee Roth clone.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Or a Jim Dandy clone, if you really want to get over it.
Yeah, if you want to get technical, yeah.
Exactly. That's cool, because that was such an era. I mean, you also had the punk scene, the Minutemen and different bands coming up from Pedro and stuff. So like,
right.
I feel like at that time, there was multiple scenes happening, even though the Sunset Strip kind of gets the lion's share of the limelight,
Yeah, and I missed out on the punk rock scene, not because I didn't like it. I had friends of mine that I went to high school with that, like my friend Allison, who was like at the shows getting her head kicked in by, guys wearing combat boots, taking amazing pictures. Now she's released this amazing coffee table book of all of her
awesome.
Punk rock shows, but she documented the whole thing. But she would tell me and my rocker friends at high school, like, oh yeah, this is, Black Flag, this is Circle Jerks, here's Fear, this is at the Shrine, blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of like got like a voyeuristic look at, at punk rock, but I never went to the punk shows, not because I wasn't into it, but it just didn't appeal to me. And I was still so into rock and roll at that point.
Well, it's also like punk it's rougher. It's less melodic. It's less songwritery. Well, so
exactly. And especially LA punk, and if I had to boil it down, like as I got older, I started, because, when you're young, you just hear punk and it's just this whole umbrella that covers everything. But then you get older and you're like, wait, there were different phases of punk. There's like, early 70s New York scene. And then it moved to England, and you've got like, the Damned and the Clash and the UK Subs and all these great bands, even before the Sex Pistols, that were so great.
Right.
And that's the stuff I like, because that was almost like power pop. Like it was, like sonically, the Sex Pistols record has more in common with like Guns N' Roses than it does the Damned. Like it's like a big produced rock record. Well, but at the time, I remember thinking, oh, it's just punk and stuff. But years later, I would realize, oh no, I like I like the British stuff the best.
Yeah.
When it came to America, like I like X, I like some Fear songs, a couple of Adolescence songs, but when it, especially when it got to that kind of like, thuggy kind of like, where it was just like, Orange County bully boys beating people up, looking
Right.
for excuse to beat up long hairs. It was just
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't like this. Yeah, it wasn't good. I'm sorry, I just didn't. There wasn't any imagine. It was just people yelling over fast songs, and it
Right.
just didn't have the imagination.
I
But
feel like the Minutemen, which obviously with D Boone dying didn't get to continue, that was at least a really original, unique take on punk-ish music, you know?
and what's interesting is those guys kind of predated. Like they were kind of like the grandfathers of what became indie alternative,
Yeah,
even before the Replacements. Like they
right.
were they were kind of writing that book.
Yeah. And it was just,
So
I mean, it was a sensibility that, again, like punk is one of those things, kind of like country or reggae, where to sound like the genre, you have to fit into the confines of what makes it the genre. And so when you
right,
get out of that, you become just who you are. So the Minutemen, you could say, yeah, they were a punk band, but the more you listen to Double Nickels on the Dime, and you're like, there's punk in there, but there's funk and political, and
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
even know what this is. Jazz, who knows? You
yeah. They
know?
were kind of all over the map.
Yeah. So it would have been
Yes,
really interesting to see what D Boone would have done had they been able to continue. But Mike Watt obviously has become the grandfather of punk bass, and
you
that
really have.
album, Ball
Yeah,
Hogger Tugboat, I think still is a really cool record. I still revisit, you know?
and such a great title.
Yeah. But the idea at the time, I mean, now you look back, it might not have the same impact. All the different musicians that were on each different song, Henry Rollins or Dave Pirner or Eddie
Right,
Vedder, they were all there because they loved him and respected him. But as a
right.
amalgam of people of that time, it's really cool document, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so when you first got out of high school and you started to find your way, what was your first actual professional gig that you got or band that was on its way to professional?
I mean, none of them really, because the first I got out of high school in '82, I dropped out, and then so like '83, I started playing in bands. So '83, '84, it was just kind of like coming up from the ashes or whatever. But then uh, the first band that I was playing in that got any kind of sway in LA and started to get a little bit of a draw was this band that we called Damn Yankees, not the Ted Nugent one.
Thank
Um,
goodness.
later, his lawyer contacted me and said, "Are you still using that name?" Um, but we were kind of doing like a cheap, tricky babies kind of like we were really into power pop, even though everybody was going into that sort of like Johnny Thunders, Aerosmith,
Right.
Stones thing.
Yep.
We were much more into like power pop. Like we looked the same. We fit in with those bands, but we were much more into Cheap Trick, Babies.
Big Star.
Uh, what's that?
Big Star.
I didn't even know Big Star until like the '90s. I hadn't even heard of them yet, so
Same.
I was late to the party. In
No,
fact, it
same.
wasn't.
Same.
It was because of Rick Parker told me that the band Teenage Fan Club were huge fans of Big Star, and that's how I found out about Big Star. So
That's sometimes the way it goes. That
yeah,
I grew up not knowing the name Big Star. I knew Alex Chilton, I knew the Box Tops,
right,
whatever.
right.
But to be able to go back and revisit that and be like, oh, this is actually really cool stuff. Now, maybe had they had that one song that would have catapulted them, and you can't say those songs are bad. It's good stuff, but there was something that they just didn't find that one song that popped them. You know?
Which still is just a mystery to me because there's so many songs that I hear, like and this is all retrospective when I got into them later in life, but
Yeah,
there's so many songs they had where I was like, why didn't somebody in the industry hear this and go, we're going to put this in a movie, or this should be, let's put some money in this, because there were
yeah,
so many great songs they had that were equally as good, if not better, than all the pablum that was on the mid to late '70s radio.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a mystery to me that I'll never understand about that band.
But a song could at any time make it into a movie and do what Stranger Things just did for Kate Bush. I mean, like
Yeah,
just to bring
yeah,
somebody back from literally like obscurity into
yeah.
everybody singing that song.
Oh yeah.
It could still happen. So, do you seem like a guy that doesn't really have guilty pleasures? Like your
Well,
pleasures are your pleasures, and music be damned. But if you were to put a couple of things up on a guilty pleasure list, what would people maybe be surprised that that you
I mean,
really
it's funny because some of my guilty pleasures, like, okay, for one thing, as you get older, you stop having less guilty pleasure and just go, fuck it, who cares? I like
Right.
Rush, so sue me,
Right.
Um, although it's weird because Rush has had this weird, especially lately, they had this weird sort of like turnaround where like now I'm not going to say it's cool to like Rush, but it's cooler than it was in like
Yeah.
the mid 80s or
Yep.
90s or something.
Yeah.
But like, and a lot of that is nostalgia, of course, but there's like a weird thing with some of my friends. Like I always feel like I need to keep a chart, like which one of my friends hate these bands and which like these bands. So I go, I know not to embarrass myself with. But one band that I would say is a guilty pleasure, because I still have a lot of friends that absolutely hate this band, but it would probably be Styx. So
still great music. I mean, Tommy Shaw's still out there killing it,
Yeah. I mean, as dorky and ridiculous as it is, I still kind of get a little bit of like excitement when I hear the beginning of Mr. Roboto. I just do.
And look, Dennis DeYoung was one of the whitest guys.
Oh yeah,
what a great voice and melodies and synthesizer playing, and there's depth to it. But I mean, compare those written songs to anything on the radio now. It's like,
yeah,
comparing the Beethoven to Baby Shark.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's interesting how some stuff that, like you said, you're walking through, you listen to something that you wrote off as being cheesy or whatever, that you're not actually like, that's actually really well written, great production. Man, the bass tone's killing.
And that's one thing that's like changed in me a lot. Also, another band, and this is something I actually have less of a shame for, but it is also very polarizing, is the band Steely Dan. Oh, yeah. I have a camp of friends that are musicians that absolutely love Steely Dan, and I have friends that are like, I will kill them. Like you're just like, whoa, okay, I'll keep you guys separate.
Right.
I love Steely Dan. They wrote some amazing songs. People gave them shit because they were too jazzy or whatever, but like I like the jazzy aspect of it.
Yeah. I love Steely Dan.
Yeah, me too. But another band, to go back to what you were just saying, that's kind of like that, is when they were at their height, I never liked Journey, because I just thought they were just like this cloying, manipulative, pandering kind of, like, I always felt like Don't Stop Believin' was created in a laboratory where they had like 13-year-old girls with blindfolds on, and they would like go, okay, if we go to this note with this chord underneath it and the singer sings this note, the girl will screech uncontrollably at 2 minutes 30 seconds. And for years they just bugged the hell out of me. As years have gone on and I've written my own songs and tried to make my own record and stuff, I now have an appreciation for them that I didn't before, where I go, okay, that's pretty good. Like it's like looking at a Swiss watch. Like I can look at it in an objective way and go, okay, cheers, good job. But like I still think it's schmaltzy as all.
I mean, well, you got Steve Smith on drums, and Neil Schon is probably one of the most singable guitar players in terms of...
Oh yeah, amazing guitar player.
When his solo comes in, you go from singing the vocal melody to singing the guitar solo.
Right, exactly.
And it's
which to me is the sign of a great band. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it's more of, it's not so much, it's like the old saying, I don't like the band, I don't hate the band, I hate their fans kind of thing. It's one of those things where it's like, it's not so much what they did, it's the reaction to, and there's a lot of bands I could say that with, where like, you hear the music and you go, okay, if I just heard this and nobody reacted to it, I might think, oh, it's okay. But then when you see the way people lose their minds for it, and you go, for that, really? So anyway, that's just my own personal thing.
But there's also the pre-escape.
Yeah, I mean, there's
pre-escape Journey was, with Greg Rowley and stuff like that. There was phases where it was different and it wasn't populist yet, It's kind of...
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And I was just talking to my girlfriend the other day, and we were talking about the song, is it Stone in Love?
Yeah.
That's a great song. And that's Perry too. But that's a really great song. I love that. That's an amazing part.
And that wasn't a single, but that's probably one of their better known songs now, because it just kept... You can't deny that song,
Yeah.
The whole build up.
Yeah. And there's some of their other songs I don't hate, but Don't Stop Believing just always just rubbed me the wrong way. But again,
it transcended them and became this thing, like Seven Nation Army did for Jack White, like Jump did for Van Halen, where now it's at bar mitzvahs and you've lost it. It's not even theirs anymore,
Well, and also too, it's not even ours anymore, because ours anymore because there's a whole generation now that they were watching The Sopranos,
Right.
and that ending scene, and that all of a sudden it was like we passed the torch to them. Like now this is their song. If you go to a because I have friends that have done covers bands that I've gone to see over the past 10 years,
Yep.
and you go to any of these covers bars, and it's like 2 a.m. and the bar's about to close, and the band starts going, and you hear the squeals go up in the club
Works.
of like girls that are like way too young to know Journey, but it's because it got passed down.
Yeah.
It totally.
Great music works. If
Yeah.
somebody's not exposed to it, it can't do its magic. So I play, because I'm a musician and I'm a music lover, I play music around my kids all the time. So when my kid starts singing Magic Power, I know that's because that song works. You know, like there's something about when it never gonna stop, you know, when that moment comes when they just throw their hands in the air and they're like, I want to go see Triumph. I'm like, yeah, you do. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
And luckily they're touring, but not in LA. So what can we do?
Oh, how weird.
Yeah. And I look, we could talk about there's certain bands that were so big at a time and now are a footnote. You know, Grand Funk Railroad sold out Shea Stadium faster than the Beatles, and now stop anybody on the street, you know, and ask them who Grand Funk Railroad is. But if you put on Some Kind of Wonderful or Closer to Home, I'm Your Captain, to me, it still works.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't sound dated. It's just this timeless thing now. But when I was teaching school, I was teaching at a charter school, and I was teaching at first kindergarten to 8th grade, and I was doing basically music appreciation.
Oh,
and
wow.
I would do different eras and artists each week. And I realized for all of these kids, everything before like the year 2000 is old. Even stuff like Eminem or the Chili Peppers, it's not even in the realm unless they got a parent, an older brother, an uncle. It was in a movie. So even the Beatles, we're starting to lose that because at home, how many people are playing the Beatles for their kids purposefully, you know, or for their own pleasure? So if we can get people to play more music, that'd be great. But ultimately, the music has to do its talking, and people like us have to tell people, hey, this band from the past, you know, you never heard this band, and they really didn't get big, but man, are you going to dig this record? And sometimes that curation, which we miss from radio where DJs used to actually curate, that curation, I think, needs to come back, because if people can find people that they trust, and I see it on social media, I see it with people who are like, you know, these records or this top 5 albums or these jazz funk songs or whatever. I see that happening in some ways, but it's not happening on a societal level where the importance of things of the past are going to be brought back. While at the same point, it's all available to you. Anything you want to hear, you can go and find it and find rabbit holes.
But if you don't know it's there, it's going to go and listen. And that's why, like, now, sadly, we're at a point where the arbiters of keeping that going for posterity are people like James Gunn, when he did the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack, opened up the second movie with Mr. Blue Sky. All of a sudden, you've got all these kids that are like, I love ELO. And you're like, yeah, we've been trying to tell you they're great for years.
Right. That's the only way they're going to get it.
They won't listen to the parents, but they'll listen to the movie.
Because the movie and the television, that's existing in their time, and it's bringing this thing back for them, so it didn't have to filter through us. While at the same, you know, it's such a hard thing because there's so much great music that is just literally forgotten about. And look, I'm a piano player, so I was just talking with my buddy Brian Haas about, you know, jazz players from the 20th century and great piano players who, like, just to find somebody who knows the name, it's like hard. But the music's still there and it's still good, and it makes you think about how things progress and what of this era, let alone the 70s, 60s, is really going to be there in 100 years. You know, will people still listen to Motown stuff because it's just now woven into the fabric of society, you know?
Yeah, I always wonder about that. I mean, I think about that a lot, especially now as we're getting older, and, you know, we're kind of the last in line. Like, it's not like our parents or like like now we've taken over that position, that pole position, and we could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think about all the time about how we're at a point now where it's like you go, well, with the ironic thing, like we said a second ago, like how young people have so much access to all the music. I mean,
Right.
on your phone, you can literally go into Spotify or iTunes and just look for any song and play it right then and there without a second's delay.
Amazing.
And but yet they're just going to these playlists.
Right.
Like playlists to me are like the most obnoxious thing. Like your own playlist is one thing, but to just go, oh, I'm bored, I'm in my car, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to put on a playlist because I don't want to think, I just want to have noise on in the background,
Right.
and it's whatever pop star hip hop thing is going on.
Right.
And I just like that kind of thinking to me is like the kind of people that go, oh, I don't really listen to music, I just have it on the background, I'm just like
Right.
you're the antichrist, like you're what's wrong with society. But like as far as it going into the future, I mean, I have to just hope that there are still going to be enough people left in this world where there's going to be enough curiosity as people get older. Nobody gets into history when they're like 10 years old. Not for the most part.
Fair
Nobody
enough.
gets into history until they're like in their 20s or 30s, like until something in their life, like I'm a really big fan of like LA and Hollywood history, and I didn't start getting interested in that until like my late 20s, early 30s. And now
Right.
I'm really, geared into it. Um,
But music in your youth imprints itself to where you get nostalgic for it.
well,
So
yeah, that there, yes, of your own time, but as far as like going back and like look, like I don't think that any guys that like got into record collecting and looking for like old Al Jolson records or old
right.
Rudy Valley records or whatever from times way beyond their time,
Yeah.
until they were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s when they started to develop an appreciation. I think that type of music appreciation accrues over time,
Yeah.
and is this sort of like an amalgam of like all your life experiences, and then all of a sudden it's like a little door that opens and you go, what's that? And then you just, it becomes an obsession. And I think that, if anything, that element of humanity hopefully will eventually come into the minds of the young people now, years
Yeah.
from now after we're dead, and that their curiosity will cause them to look for that. And the good thing is now, like in the old days, it's like people that are into like old films, like so many films from like the birth of film, the silent era, the
Yep.
20s, 30s, 40s. Like there's
All
so
of it.
many films that are lost to the sands of time. Like
Yeah.
the movie London After Midnight, it's gone. Like nobody's got a copy of it.
Wow.
Um, and there's some other films too that just got like somehow the negatives got lost, and they just there's no
Well,
like
that Universal warehouse fire, that
that
giant.
was horrible. And
I
not
mean,
just movies, but music. A lot of music got lost in
that
that.
was like
So
our Library of Alexandria.
yeah, good analogy.
I mean,
Um, but except Julius Caesar didn't burn it down,
that we know of.
that we know of. But so because all of our, because since the 40s or 50s, and especially since modern technology has gotten better at recording also, and now that everything's been entered into and recorded into digital files,
Right.
digitized and everything, hopefully the collectors of the future will look back and because they have all of it there and it's
Yep.
been faithfully and really well recorded,
Yep.
then if they do get the curiosity, it'll be so much easier for them to have access to it. And they won't have to hunt it down. They won't have to write to somebody in Switzerland who has a record label and
Yeah.
have correspondence for 20 years. Like they just go beep beep beep, and it's
And I
although
think,
then it'll just be a mind chip, and they'll just see it.
well, with music, it's something where to put on a 3-minute song and sample it even for a little bit,
Mhm.
versus if you're a novelist, and I see people reading less and less. I love to read, and it's always been a thing of mine. But I see obviously people are reading less and less, and it makes me think like all the great writers of the past. Like who's going to read Studs Terkel, or who's going to, if you have to read Kurt Vonnegut for school, that's cool.
Right.
But as soon as they stop requiring that, so it's
Yeah, that's a
difficult.
hard one.
I mean, I'm sitting
Yeah.
surrounded by books and records and posters and all the stuff because that's my,
Right. We're tactile.
but we're unique people.
Right. Well, our generation was tactile. We want. I still have all my CDs and my DVDs.
Yeah.
Never getting rid of them. Sorry, and my
Try,
books.
try a house fire. It's a good way to just purge
Uh,
everything you got.
Dude, I still
Yeah.
that just kills me every time you tell me that. I just can't. I don't know how
It's
you went through that.
You know
That's
what? I accepted it as soon as I heard the news. I accepted it
mhm.
100%. And then anytime I thought of something that I lost, I opened my. This is literally what I did. I opened my hand, let go of the string, and watched the balloon fly up in the sky. Because when you're a
You're
kid
a
and you
better
lose
man
a
than I
balloon,
am. Yeah,
that's the first time you go, well, fuck, I'm not getting that back.
yeah,
So, and now I've recollected records, and there's stuff I lost that I could
yeah.
never get again, but there's stuff I have now that I never knew I wanted. So,
Yeah, that's the right way to think about it. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I have two friends that who are musicians who lost fire or lost their house in fires in Altadena,
Yes.
and I should have you guys talk to each other.
Sure.
You can. I'm sure they've gone through everything you're going through, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's a unique thing because the thing about being an artist that is not incredibly successful and famous is there's not a price on the art you lost. So everything that I lost from my early years, all the art stuff, my insurance
right,
company was like, "Yeah, whatever. That's not worth anything." And I'm like, "Well,
right.
it's my life's work." But
Yeah, yeah,
so all I had to do was
yeah.
kick into gear and write all of the next music and write even more than I wrote before and make it better than, I had to just my mindset was like, "All right, time to get to work."
Yeah.
You know?
Well, good for you.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's loss of life and there's loss of things.
Right.
So, talk to me really quickly about, or not real quickly, as long as you want, about getting into movie and special effects because that
Oh,
aspect of you is something people who know you as a drummer, you post things and they know things, but how did you actually get into doing that for work and a career?
it literally just dropped in my lap. My brother, who the business dropped in his lap too. He was a PA on a TV show. There was a guy with a ventriloquist dummy. The guy over craft store said, "Hey, what are you doing after the show? You want to come work for me?" And taught my brother how to be a machinist. A couple years later, my brother's working on Jurassic Park 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but right before that happened, he was working at this shop out in the valley called ADI, and he called me up and said, "Hey, are you working right now?" I said, "No, I need a job." And he said, "Well, if you want to be a runner, it's like a PA
Yeah.
out at the shop I'm at, show up here on Monday morning." So I went there, and it was basically, I had a little pickup truck. They said, "Okay, just go to this place, pick up some plaster, go to this place, pick up some latex, go
Right.
some movie blood, you know, teddy bear fur, whatever." Like, and the show I was working on, or the shop I was working at, we were doing 3 shows at the same time: the Santa Claus, Mortal Kombat, and Jumanji, the first
Wow.
Jumanji. Yeah,
Yeah.
in one shop. I mean, people were like asshole to elbow, like bumping into each other. It was crazy.
How cool
I
though.
met so many great people there that I'm still friends with today, and it was amazing. It was like walking into like $1 million toy store every day. Like
Yeah.
but the toys cost like more than your house. Like, you know, giant crocodile for Jumanji that I actually got
Right.
to work on. The Goro creature we did for Mortal Kombat with the forearms was amazing. Um,
And were you aware of like Rick Baker and different stuff before that, or was
oh
this
yeah,
all kind of new to you?
well, that's what I was starting to say before, was that when I was a kid, I really got into Planet of the Apes. Like
Yeah.
that's why I said if I didn't follow the music path, I would have gotten into makeup effects because I loved, seeing the Carol Burnett where Roddy McDowell comes on wearing the Cornelius thing, or when
Yeah.
Paul Williams went on Johnny Carson, which you haven't seen, is hilarious, in the full Virgil makeup, and
Oh, that's awesome.
he's like a Kenny Youngman with like a drink and a cigarette. It's so funny.
And
Um,
on a side note, I have to ask, when you saw Paul Williams as a child, did he do any Phantom of the Paradise music?
you know what's funny? I didn't know about Phantom of the Paradise yet, but when we saw him, he did the hell of it, and I remember that because right before he did, he was like, "Oh, this is a song from a movie I just did called Phantom of the Paradise," which I had heard of as a kid, but I hadn't seen it yet.
Yep.
And right before, he had this actress come on stage dressed up as Glinda the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz, and they did
Okay.
this whole shtick. Years later, I was talking to Paul Williams. I got his email somehow, and I don't know if you've ever met him, he's very forthcoming and generous, and he's really friendly.
Oh, love
And I
that.
sent him an email. I said, "Hey, just to let you know, I saw you at the amphitheater, and this woman was dressed up like Glinda the Good Witch." And he goes, "Oh yeah, that was Julie D's, Rick D's wife." And I was like,
Huh.
"Okay, yeah, that was crazy." Anyway, so yeah, so I loved I loved makeup. I was a huge fan of the '70s King Kong movie. So in Newsweek magazine, there was this whole article on them making the movie, and there was a whole thing on this guy named Rick Baker. And I was, when you're a little kid and like somebody, there's like a baseball player, and you go, Sandy Koufax, like that's my guy, and that's all you obsess with. I heard like Rick Baker, like that guy's he made this amazing gorilla costume, and so his and same thing with Paul Williams, he was in Battle of the Planet of the Apes, and then later he's in Phantom of the Paradise. So he's stuck in my
the Bandit.
And Smokey and the Bandit.
Come on,
he was in everything back then.
Yeah.
And so and I got to meet him, which I'll tell you about in a second, which was amazing. So I was always really like I knew what, and I saw on Z Channel there was some short documentary they played about Dick Smith doing the makeup for Little Big Man on Dustin Hoffman. Okay. And that's where I first learned like what appliances were, the foam appliances and how they do it. And it was just like, oh wow, this is really cool. And but I got into music instead. And then sometime right after high school, I remember over on Cahuenga, there was this little makeup school. And I went by there one day and I walked in and talked to the guy and I talked to my dad. It's like, hey dad, because my dad was like really into college and school, and like any school if I wanted to go to, he would have had his checkbook out. But nice. I didn't go to college, but I was like, there's this makeup school, and I wonder if you'd go with me over there to talk about it. And we went and talked to the guy, and he was kind of an arrogant douche, the teacher there. So I didn't end up going. But I remember seeing all around the classroom, there were like life cast masks of different actors, and like there were appliances, and I just remember like going, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I could see wanting to do this. And then sometime in 90 or 89 or 90, my dad knew this guy named Maurice Stein, who was a big Hollywood makeup artist. And he had a shop over in Toluca Lake called Cinema Secrets. And they were like the makeup supply, like them and Namies and the other place on Lower Canyon, I can't remember, Sig Friends, that were like all the suppliers to the makeup people. And so my dad got me a job there, and part of the arrangement was I work in the back, like pouring latex masks. They would make their own Halloween masks, and then I'd get free makeup classes on the weekend. And so that was kind of like, and this is still before, because I didn't get into makeup effects. I didn't start working in the shops until '94.
Okay,
so this is early '90s, and I did that for a couple of years, and I got to learn how to do makeup and stuff. But it was just me dipping my toe in the water, and it wasn't until I got the job at ADI where it was just like, okay, this is really cool. But I still was, if somebody said, well, are you a makeup effects artist? I'm like, no, I'm a musician. Like, this is just my day job, my day gig.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend of mine who I worked with, who was another musician, was like, hey, man, we should start a band. I'm like, dude, I've been doing this shit for 10 years. I don't think I can start another band anymore. I don't have it in me yet. Because by that point, I'd been in Gilby's side project, the Blackouts. We were doing showcase after showcase, getting passed. I was in Rick Parker's band that went nowhere. I was in all these bands that were like got so close to getting signed and then just fell through. So by 94, 95, when I was working in makeup effects, I was like, I'm kind of done with this. And then my friend, the musician friend of mine, said, well, what would it take for you to get to do another band? I said, if like Van Halen's tour bus drove up and went, get in, Alex Van Halen just exploded, we need a drummer. Like some amazing pie in the sky thing. Well, later that year, I got a call from Roger Manning. So,
and there you are.
Yeah, and so I went into finally doing what I wanted to do, which was Imperial Drag. I did that for 3 years.
Yep.
And then when that caved in, I went back to makeup effects because I needed a job. So, it's like first thing I can do. I can make good money. They already know me. I just call them up and they go, "Be here on Monday." And so I did that another. I worked total as a runner for 10 years. And then in 2005, my friend Mike Elizalde had started his own shop, Spectral Motion in Glendale. And I called him up one time and said, hey, man, I would love to work in the shop, but like I don't want to be a runner anymore. I want to like do stuff. Because I had been learning stuff. Like, that was the cool thing about working in the shops is I could just, look over people's shoulders and go, how do you do that? What are you doing that mold? How are you doing that appliance seam? How are you doing, mixing the foam? And everybody was always very, I'll show you how to do it. Everybody was very generous with, the knowledge. So I learned a lot. And, Mike hired me on over there. And within like a year after I worked at his place, I was working on Slither over at Todd Masters. So I did that for about 5 years. But then around the time of 2009, my mom got sick and I had to take care of her. And I'd already been in the business for like 15 years. And one of the things that bugged me about the business, and which is why I got out, was because all the chemicals they use to make that stuff are
Yeah.
really nasty. They're really carcinogenic, and they're
Yeah.
really, the shops are like kind of safe. They've got spray booths, but people spray stuff out in the open and grind fiberglass, and there's
Yeah.
glass. Like, I would never walk in there without snapping on a mask and gloves, because
Yeah.
it, it was
Yeah.
just, there was crap everywhere and dust and everything. So yeah, I just got out, and I'm kind of glad I got out when I did, because a lot of my friends who are still in it are having a really hard time now, because Hollywood's kind of collapsing, and
Yep.
the effects business now with everything going to digital. There's been like a big resurgence of practical effects that
Yep.
have helped. But there's all these young kids that are going to these makeup schools now, and they're getting hired in for a fraction of the veterans who really know how to do this, and they're lifers.
Right.
And so these young kids are coming in out of like Mud and all these other makeup schools that'll work for like a third of what they pay the veterans, and now the veterans are like, I'm not getting work.
And now AI can do it post-production in a way
Yeah,
that,
yeah. I
it's
mean,
a weird time.
it's a really weird time, and I really feel for a lot of my friends who are. In fact, I know a lot of people that got out of the business. My brother, who worked in makeup effects business from God, the early '90s until I guess the late '90s. He and his wife started a really successful web design company and never looked back, and
Yeah.
made a ton of money. But he got out. He saw the end, because like they were filming Jurassic Park 2, and they're up in the redwoods with their giant stegosaurus that they built in a shop for 6 months, and Dennis Muren's there going, within earshot, going, "Oh yeah, we can do that better in digital." And my brother's like, "We just worked on this thing for 8 months, dude.
Yeah.
What the hell?" So
It's things change, right?
yeah, really.
Before we wrap up, tell me the Paul Williams
Hmm.
story you were going to tell.
So sometime around, I want to say the early 2000s, maybe, Paul used to be, before he was head of ASCAP, he was running, I don't think it was either Sweet Relief or Music Cares, one of those recovery organizations within the RIAA or ASCAP, or one of those. And because he's like a big, heavy proponent for recovery.
Yeah.
And so he was doing these benefit shows around LA, and I had heard he had done one over at like Spaceland, and I missed it. But then a month later, he was doing one at the gig in West LA. So I went down there, and it was just him and his piano player, and they were doing, like all the Carpenter songs, and
Right.
I think he did like Faust and it was it was one of the other songs, the one that Phoenix sings, but I can't remember it right now. But he the more mellow songs, he played those. After the show, he was just walking around the club, and like people were just going up and talking to them, and I knew I wanted to talk to him. I knew I'm like, this is like my chance to meet him. And I've never been like an autograph hound. It just never appealed to me. But for some reason, I brought my one of many LPs of the Phantom of Paradise cover, and I finally, the crowd parted, and I saw he was unattended, so I walked up and I started talking to him, and he was so nice and so friendly. And we were talking about Phantom of the Paradise. He's like, yeah, we were filming in the daytime, and then I'd go into the studio and work on the songs, and then come back the next day and film, and like just telling me all this stuff. And it's like, when you meet like a star and they're like talking to you for so long, you're like, do you have to talk to somebody or go somewhere? Because like you feel bad, like you're taking some of their time, but they're being so generous. He was just talking my ear off. And then finally, when the conversation kind of lulled, he saw the album cover and he goes, "Oh, do you want me to?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." I forgot.
Yeah.
So he pulls out the pen and he's just about to sign. And I kind of jokingly said, "I guess I don't need to tell you what to write." And he kind of smirked and he writes, "Trust me, Swan, Paul Williams." And I was just it was amazing.
Awesome. That's awesome.
It was so great. It was really great. And he couldn't have been cooler.
I love that.
And then a couple years later, when he did the documentary called Paul Williams is Still Alive, have you seen it?
Yes.
It's really great.
Great.
He was at the New Art, and Cassie and I went down and saw him speaking there. And he has the best stories. Like he always, his whole thing of like, yeah, the 70s were great. I just wish I remembered it.
Yeah. It's a lot of people did not survive with their mind intact,
No.
So before we wrap up, so we don't sound like old men yelling, "Get off my lawn, you kids!" What are some albums from the past that you would recommend somebody just sight unseen on your recommendation go out and check out? Like some albums of power pop, rock, genres that you've been a fan of that you think have just been forgotten or just need a spotlight? A couple
Well,
recommendations.
definitely Crazy Horses by the Osmonds. An
100%.
amazing record front to back. Um, God, what else? There's so many. That's an old one. One that's a newer one that I would say, not just one record, but the artist in general, is I really like the guy Joe Keery, who's on Stranger Things. Has a
Okay.
band called Joe, spelled DJO.
Okay.
Check out his music; it's incredible.
I will.
He's really, really talented. Cassie and I just sort of happened on him by accident. I was watching YouTube one day, and they were playing a recent Lollapalooza festival in Chicago, and his band came on, and I was like, "Oh, it's the guy from Stranger Things." And we're watching it, we're going, "This guy is really good." Like
How
it's
cool.
kind of Tame Impala-ish. It's kind
Yeah.
of very synthy, kind of 70s. It's kind of in the vein of like what Air does, or like I said, Tame Impala, like that kind of like where it's kind of retro-y but not kind of modern. Also,
Yeah.
really good.
Very
Um,
cool.
yeah, and God, I mean, there's so many records I could say. I'm just my mind is.
I know. I didn't mean to hit you with that. Like of all the
Oh,
records
that's
of all
okay.
time, but like with
Who are
newer
your favorite
bands,
children?
like you're hip to the Lemon Twigs?
Oh yeah, we got into them on the ground level. They were
Yes.
they were really really great band.
So that's
Really loved
that's a
them.
band who's carving a path that has tons of grounded retro tendencies, but
Oh
they're
yeah,
also creating new music. And I'm really
yeah,
actually like when they get past this Revolver Rubber Soul
yeah.
phase. I can't wait till they hit like their psychedelic phase, the disco phase, all the
Yeah.
like. I can't like. I think they're hitting finally songwriting. With Everything's Harmony. There's some of those songs just are so good
Oh
that I'm
yeah.
really excited for what they're going to do. And then Improvement Movement. Have you heard them?
No, no, no.
Fernando Perdomo turned me on to them.
Oh,
He,
okay.
he's a guy that posts all the time about tons of stuff, and he posts.
Right.
I just drove out to Pappy and Harriet's to see this band. Oh my God! Come out to. I think they were playing at the Echo or someplace. You got to come and see them in LA. Anybody? And I listened to the clip, and I was like, I think I do have to go see them. And I
Hmm.
randomly bought a ticket and went. And I remember I was standing next to all musicians in there, and leaning to the person next to me saying, "This feels important." Like it kind of like really, really good. Like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young meets Yes with
Really?
probably the best live harmonies I may have ever heard.
Oh, nice.
Like
I'm
Barb,
a sucker for harmony, so
and again, a band that I think is going to find that the song or songs that really elevate them to that next level.
hmm.
It's a bit of an interesting dive at this point, but just like blown away. I would go see them anytime they came to town. So I love that there's new bands out there that, again, some of the stuff we like, it has a retro feel and it appeals to some of the things that we
Sure.
like, but they're making new music and making new
Yeah.
sounds, and it's now, you know?
Well, one of the bands that I got into recently, although this is sort of a mixed bag because I like their older stuff, not so much their newer stuff, but I really got into a couple of years ago the band Ghost.
Yeah.
Have you checked out Ghost?
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily for me, but I get it.
But the thing I like about what he did, at least in the beginning, was um, he I think he's like in his mid to late 30s now. So he's still, I think he had an older brother that turned him on to stuff that we were listening to. But
Yep.
like his earlier stuff was kind of like that weird period of like 80s Aussie kind of metal,
Yeah.
like Judas Priest and Ozzy, with like Jakey Lee, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And he's written some really great songs. Like his best record is Meliora. I really
Okay.
like that record. But he was dipping his toes in this kind of like pop ABBA kind of thing, which a lot of his more metal fans were like, "What the hell is this?"
Right.
Which I thought was kind of cool. But
Yeah.
now he's just gone full blown that, and I feel like what he had before, I feel like he's lost now. That's just my personal thing. But
Yeah.
Meliora is a great record. If you want to listen to Ghost, that's I think their best
I will
record.
definitely check that out. Sometimes it's something where maybe I heard something and I dismissed it because I didn't have the time, and then somebody says, "Hey, check out that particular record," and I go, "Oh, okay," and then I listen and
Oh
I
yeah.
get it again.
Well, there's also times too where like you're not in the right headspace. I remember years ago, the first time I heard Queens of the Stone Age,
Yeah.
and I just didn't like them. I was like, that's just kind of noisy and drony. And then a couple of years later, I heard Songs for the Deaf, and I was at a record store and they were playing, and I was like, "This is amazing! What is this?" And he goes, "Oh, it's a new Queens of the Stone Age." And it was the one that Grohl was on, and I bought it right then. And on the way driving home, I was like, "Wow, this is amazing! It reminds me of two of my favorite bands, Masters of Reality and 11." And I look at the liner notes, and it's like written and produced by Chris Goss of Masters of Reality, and then who's in the band? Oh, Alan Johannes and Natasha Schneider. I was like, well, there you go.
And I think Sunrise on the Suffer Bus is still one of my favorite albums of that era. Yeah,
such a great record.
It's just still Ginger Baker, you know?
Yeah,
like that flavor in there elevated it. Ginger Baker did to Sunrise on the Suffer Bus what Val Kilmer did to Tombstone. No, yes, no, maybe.
I'm not that familiar with Tombstone. Everybody I know raves about that movie. I've never seen it. I need to watch it.
It's just one of those movies that it would be a perfectly good movie. You got, Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott, whatnot, but Val Kilmer's role in this elevates it. And it's something that happens with a movie sometimes, or a band sometimes, where just one person pushes it up to, like, instead of just like, yeah, you could see it, or yeah, you got to see that because Val Kilmer, or whatever. So
right.
And they're just the power of one person in an ensemble to really just like step it up,
Yeah.
You never know. Well, I love this conversation. I love finally connecting with you to have this, and I hope we can hang in person at some point. Maybe we'll catch a movie premiere or go see a show or something. That
would be excellent.
I would love it. Well, Eric, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to hit pause on record, so hang with me for 1 sec.